I will like to first introduce myself. I am Shamira Wilson, a care coordinator at Mount Sinai Queens, and I'm a part of the BLACC ERG group, who so wonderfully coordinated all of the events, and they will now each take turns introducing themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Powers, co-lead for the BLACC ERG at Mount Sinai Morningside.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Devon. I am patient advocate here at Mount Sinai Queens and a co-lead to the BLACC ERG here at MSQ. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Clouden. I'm the volunteer coordinator over at Mount Sinai West, and I'm the co-lead of the BLACC ERG here at West alongside Ramona Gross.
Okay, thank you guys very much. I would like to give some background to our discussion today. On June 19th, 1865 in Galveston, Texas, nearly 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, the remaining group of enslaved African Americans learned they were emancipated. On Saturday, June 19th, we will recognize Juneteenth and commemorate those who were the last to learn of their freedom. As we celebrate Juneteenth, we will uplift those who are not able to celebrate this day with us and give light to their impact and influence for us to be a better version of ourselves every day. To help facilitate this discussion, we have 3 panelists today. And please forgive me and correct me if I pronounce anyone's name wrong. But we have Sean Lee with us today, who is the Associate Director of Operations and of the FPA Administration in the Central Billing Office. And we also have Dr. Jermaine Nelson. She is a Clinical Program Manager, Department of Environmental Medicine and Public Health. She has many titles and departments, and if you want, you can interject and, go through the list of titles, or you can wait a little bit later. And we also have Danette Truce, who is a business partner in human resources. Okay. So we can kick this off and start our panel questions. I believe Ron will ask the first question.
I'd like to ask the panel how old you were when you first learned of the Juneteenth holiday, and what do you recall of that memory? I actually have very distinct memories when I first learned about the holiday, and I wasn't a young man. I was pretty much stepping into adulthood, and I was surprised because I was always one who was into quote unquote Black, issues and information. You can answer first, Sean.
I'm trying to let the ladies go first. So I'll be honest with you. I would love to say I was 19 years old and so into Black history that I learned about Juneteenth then, but I honestly learned about it last year. I knew of Juneteenth, but I didn't know the significance of it or the details of it. And with everything that went on last year, learning about everything, I learned about Juneteenth, and it blew my mind that, a year after the Emancipation Proclamation, that people were finally freed over there in Galveston, Texas. And, once something related to me, of course, with everything that happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, it just sparked more interest for me to learn more. And that's when I first learned of it.
Great response. Ms. Truss. Same question. You're still muted there.
Hi, everybody. Let me first start by saying, thank you to the BLACC ERG leads for inviting me to this conversation. I come to this conversation as a Black Caribbean American woman. And when I heard that the ERG leads were pulling together a celebration for Juneteenth, and it was a multi-hospital celebration, you know, me being from Beth Israel, I'm like, well, I want to get in on that. Yeah, put me on. And the team said, yeah, come on in. We'll invite you and we'll share with you how what we would like for you to participate. So an email came through. I didn't read the email in full. I read the first 2 lines and said, thank you for including us. I didn't realize that I was agreeing to talk on a panel about Juneteenth. And I struggled a little bit to say yes to this conversation because one, I questioned my qualifications, right? And then I questioned if it's my story to tell. So I did some sort of soul searching and some research. And, you know, after learning a lot, I realized that saying yes to this meant that I had to become more intimately involved, because I think going back and thinking about the history of institutional slavery within the United States and around the world is not easy. It's an extremely emotionally taxing, especially for me. And I'm raw right now. And I don't know if you hear it in my voice. I am really raw. So when I learned about Juneteenth, that was last year. And I did not dig into it. I just learned about it. I think because I said yes to this project, I am so much more clear. And I don't know, I had to stretch myself. I had to lean into all of the details about racism. And I think that I come away today a lot more enriched about the history of Juneteenth. And I'm happy I actually said yes, because I was going to bow out so fast out of this conversation. So I do appreciate you guys inviting me in, and there's just so much more for me to learn. So I thank you for that. And that's my connection to Juneteenth.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful answer. Dr. Nelson?
Good afternoon, everybody. And I would first like to thank Dr. Davis, Charney Butts, Pam Abner, the BLACC ERG, and my leadership and my division for providing the space and grace as this organization embarks on a journey to live out the things that have been stated in our task force. I was 12 when I learned about Juneteenth. My family background is from the South, North Carolina. And through my family and church, when I was between 12 and 13, I learned of Juneteenth. My grandmother grew up in the segregated South. So history was always shared, and legacy, and the charge that we would not only be socially responsible, but educate ourselves. So I think someone alluded to all the things I have associated with my name. That's because of the legacy of education and excellence, and just sharing. It's something that the family always talked about, people being enslaved, and the journey here in the United States. So that's when I learned.
Again, I thank you all for those very thoughtful answers. And Juneteenth is definitely a day that's impactful for all of us. So I'm glad that we were able to be exposed to it and do some research on it, whether we found out later on in life or whether it was still to us in our youth. We're all here together now talking about and sharing information, and that's very important. So for the next question, I'll move to I'm sorry, to Robin to ask the next question.
Hey, Robin, I think you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'd like to ask the panel the second question, and that is to present 1 to 2 historical facts that you learned or you came to know about Juneteenth, and what ways people of color contributed toward advances in healthcare. The second part to that is, and why are those facts important in healthcare now, and what is the significance and importance to you? I could start with Dr. Jermaine.
Hi, I think when we opened, it was spoken about, it was well after the proclamation that freedom was really vetted out for a group of slaves in Texas. It was 2.5 years later. And a fact for me, my birthday is actually September 22nd. And that is the date of the initial proclamation was September 22nd. And then it was January 1st, 1863, that people were to be released from slavery, if you will. Yeah. So just thought I'd share that date, the beauty of my birthday. So, you know, that's one of those facts about Juneteenth. Also, some of the things that did occur in Texas, and I tied to the Confederate flag because a lot of people last year, when there were marches and discussions and people were tearing down things that were related to the Confederacy, people really, you know, people would say, well, what's the big deal? It was the Confederacy that was still holding slaves. And I think that's something that people need to be aware of as it pertains to the flag. So just an additional layer for me. When you look at contributions to medicine and healthcare, I look at all the talented people here at Mount Sinai. And then last year we had the scientist Kismikia Corbett, who had done so much work related to the COVID-19 vaccine and some of the discoveries in her lab. So I think about those things.
Excellent. Thank you. Danette?
So when I started to research Juneteenth, I really couldn't land on a specific fact because when I think of that date, Juneteenth, it's everything that came before it and everything that came after it. So I landed on what I believe are the tenets of Juneteenth, which was freedom and equity. And when I think of freedom, I'm thinking, you know, agency without restriction, or if you Google freedom, you'll probably find something like, you know, the power, the right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance. When I think of equity, it's that state of being equal, especially when it comes to your rights and your status. So for me, Juneteenth represents those two tenets. But what struck me as interesting was the actual order that was read to the people of Texas on June 19th by General Granger, who was the person who delivered the message. And I just want to read it because I don't know how many of us had a chance to read it. But it says, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection heretofore existing between them becomes employer and hired help. But it goes on to say that the freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. And this, this is like, I think if I have to imagine like receiving that message and being in a space where the enslaved people heard it for the first time, I think they probably would have latched on to all slaves are free, and may have missed the caveat that, you know, you're free, but well, not really, you know. So that really stuck out to me. So Juneteenth for me represents a milestone, and it tells me that, you know, the struggle continues. We have to continue to stay engaged and stay focused on you know, making sure that the most marginalized among us are reaping the benefits of our equity and freedom within this country. So.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, so along those same lines, that just in reading up about Juneteenth, it was really looking for, you know, what happened after. You can only imagine you've been denied every potential resource to be able to build wealth, learn, grow, and now someone tells you you're free. And just looking for something that they were given, right? Like, all right, you're free now. You're just gonna let them roam out there and figure out life on their own. Like, what I guess what structures were in place to really guide them to survive. And it was almost like a setup for a crabs in the barrel mentality, where they were just going to have to crawl and fight and battle each other for any potential resources that were still being controlled by the white man at that time. So that was a struggle for me, and you can see it now. I mean, back in the 80s, over the development of prisons, and even now when you're looking at this sort of mentality or perception that there's not enough resources or there's not enough opportunity, that is true to an extent, but we've been designed with this mentality for a long time, and how do we shake that? And as far as the one Black person I learned about that contributed to healthcare, just read up on this recently, it was Jane Cook Wright. She actually was the first person who created an innovative way of testing drugs on cancer cells on using patient tissue instead of laboratory mice. And her research actually helped transform chemotherapy. And she was actually named elected the first woman president in 1971. And we know how viciously cancer has, you know, ravaged anyone, not just Black people, but, you know, that I thought that was interesting to learn about. And, you know, just in learning about this over the last year, it's really made me take a step back and actually start to look at my son and what he's learning about.
It was like, what ways of people of color contributed toward advancing healthcare relative to Juneteenth?
So I think one of the most impactful way people of color influence healthcare is the fact that they continue to raise awareness about how people of color really, you know, feel and experience healthcare. There are issues around access and availability. Certain communities do not have actual facilities. Folks are not insured, they can't afford it. And then thinking deeper into the history, you know, how people of color were treated when it comes to experimentation. And, you know, I know everybody knows about Tuskegee, but there were so many others. You know, Black women were sterilized without permission. You had, you know, there's a lot of work that this Dr. Harriet Washington did. She wrote Medical Apartheid, and she talked about the work of Dr. Sims, James Moran Sims. He had a statue in Central Park, and it was recently removed. And he did a lot of good work around, you know, gynecology procedure and treatment for women. But the way in which he went about doing that, it was unethical. He really experimented without anesthesia on enslaved women in the South, perfected the procedure. A lot of these women suffered a lot of pain and discomfort, and even died as a result of it. So the fact that people of color gained access into medicine, despite all of the restrictions, and begin to really raise awareness about how, you know, we are experiencing and feeling healthcare is vitally, vitally important. And it continues today. And, you know, what gives me hope is like Sean mentioned about, you know, folks who are up and coming who will really influence this industry. It's like, you know, med students and everyone else that are coming into the industry, they are coming in with fresh eyes. And we just need to encourage them to really be brave about speaking up about things that doesn't feel right or seem right, or you know, I don't know, we just really have to encourage them. And I think that that is going to impact us tremendously moving forward.
Yeah, I feel that's very, very important. Thank you, panel, for those answers. Ashley?
Alrighty, thank you so much for your response. So, although Juneteenth represents the emancipation of the last group of enslaved African Americans, it's not widely known or celebrated like the 4th of July. What are some ways that we can promote this holiday and really ensures that it carries the same importance as 4th of July? Dr. Jermaine, I can start with you.
I think forums like this continue to raise awareness and extend out into the world. There's a lot of discussion about July 4th being Independence Day because all people that were born in the United States of America were not free. So that causes a lot of rawness to begin with. There are a number of states that are doing things to look at Juneteenth being a recognized federal holiday in the United States, across the United States. There are different, I think 56 states now that recognize it, but it's visceral when people say July 4th is Independence Day because there were people that were enslaved. So that is my thought on it. But certainly forums like this to raise awareness where people can begin to discuss that everybody was not free and not just people of color having that discussion is how we continue to raise awareness in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Jermaine. You know, word of mouth definitely helps, you know, the word get around. So Sean, Danette, what are your insights into how can we make Juneteenth as celebratory as 4th of July?
I definitely think buy-in from leadership of all races. Jermaine already pretty much stated it very eloquently that, of course, awareness, making sure that everyone understands the significance of Juneteenth. But I think the allyship is very important. I think anything that we've seen over the last year is that the intersectionality of issues is so important. And the more that we band together and bring awareness to everything, the better off we'll be to make sure that everyone feels inclusive, especially when it comes to this day. Now, one of the greatest things about this awareness is Jermaine actually shared the fact how July 4th was how do I say this? I guess sort of a touchy subject for some people. And I didn't know that. And this just shows, I mean, you can call it what you want, either my ignorance or my lack of knowledge. Growing up for years, it was just barbecue party time for me. You know, you would work out in the morning so that when you went and ate at the barbecue, you didn't feel so bad about yourself. That was me for years. But now in learning more, it's like, okay, I can understand that this is supposed to be our freedom, but freedom wasn't free. So this just shows you why it's so important that we keep bringing the word and the knowledge of all of this information. And I mean, without getting too deep, but critical race theory can and maybe might help it. I don't know. I know there's a lot of different views on it. Don't attack me. But we have to find a way to get to the kids. I mean, it's so important. If we get to the younger generation, I'll say that 100 times on these Zooms. That's the goal, getting them being informed with them so that they know how to approach things going forward. So, yeah.
I definitely echo Sean's and Jermaine's thoughts around this. I mean, it is such a shameful and painful history that we don't want to confront, but I think we need to really confront it because we're not going to get past it if we don't confront it. And so definitely raising awareness and highlighting the contributions of all people so that you, and especially people of color, so that it's not an anomaly. It's not, the first and the first and the first, So, making this information available to everyone. And then I think it requires also a recommitment on our end to keep this alive and educate ourselves as much as possible about the history and staying connected with what's happening currently.
Thank you so much for your answers. Definitely, I even learned about Juneteenth in community college. So I was grateful to even have a professor that taught in an African American history class. Prior to that, I didn't know about Juneteenth really. So it was great that I had someone educate me about this and, continue to learn more about it. I'll pass it on to Ron for the next question.
Great. Guys, we've all talked about how we've been informed and enlightened by our knowledge of Juneteenth. I would like for you to tell us now how you incorporate the values of Juneteenth into your career and into your everyday life. And then I'll follow that up with another question. We can start with Dr. Jermaine.
I think incorporating it into everyday life is really speaking out where you see instances of injustice, fairness, equity. I think mentoring people. So particularly, girls and boys who are of color and don't see careers in healthcare because it's not the narrative that they see all the time. Is powerful. Speaking about housing inequities and raising awareness related to that in the community. Just any number of ways, but I would say whenever you see injustice, you have to speak about it. That's why these committees and groups are so important within the organization. So we continue to look at equity in our workspaces. and just really being a good steward of things that occur in your communities, be it through churches, speaking to children, mentoring. You know, people oftentimes will ask me to mentor, and it's like, wow, mentoring takes a lot of work and devotion, but you just have to open yourself and try to juggle between your work life and your family life and people that need to be mentored. I think all of it. And the other thing that I would say to anyone that's on the Zoom, if you go to a meeting and the meeting room is not diverse, I think you have to ask why. And that's how you expand and extend the legacy of Juneteenth. And that's what we need to do more of in healthcare.
Okay, Donette?
How do I incorporate Juneteenth in my daily life? So I think that something that I practice is leading with empathy and engaging with kindness. I think that everyone's story is important. So when I engage with anyone, regardless of where they're from, I try to lend an empathetic ear and really be kind. That's it.
Sean?
I just want to say, I think we should take that sound bite from Jermaine about asking about why the room is not diverse and start the Zoom off in the recording. Like, I don't know who does the editing, but that sound bite is so crucial because I remember when I first made it into that room and nobody understood the significance of that. So I just wanted to put that out there. But as far as what values I'm putting into my role, first off, clear and effective communication. And the fact that, Galveston was the last place to get the message, it just shows you exactly how it happens at some institutions. Things happen on the left wing and the right wing doesn't find out until a month or two later. Powerful Zooms like this don't make it to everybody else until they're given time by their leadership to attend or to look at it on top of other life issues. I think clear and effective communication is one of the biggest things that hold us back. And sometimes it's not even for lack of us taking the time to give our words and give our time, but it's making sure that the powers that be understand that this is just as important as how we feel. So I take that into my role, and every time there's something significant, I don't care if it's cost sharing on telehealth, I say it till I'm blue in the face at every forum and every town hall, at every team huddle. So nobody can say we did not know. There's even a grid that lives on a shared drive, on a portal. There's not enough communication that you can give when it's something important to what someone else is trying to do, whether it's their job or whether it's their life values, to make sure they have an equitable opportunity to do something great.
Absolutely. Communication is key in all things. And, it's significant that, as you said, it was because of that distance from everything that Texas and Louisiana were the last to get that information. But just like with today, media controls what goes out and what you hear and see and everything else. So when you see the things going on today, when you talk about the critical race theory and having states legislate that away and looking to endeavor to change history books, that becomes very, very dangerous. Right. So it depends on us. I guess what we call back in the motherland the oracles, to get that information out there, to make sure that, the history is passed down and everybody knows what they should know about themselves in order to be the best selves that they could be. So with that being said, I'm going to follow with one more question. I want you guys to choose one word to describe what Juneteenth means to you and share that with us.
Hi, it's me, Jermaine. I'm going to cheat a little, but I say sacred memory.
That's
because
we'll give you the grace.
We have to understand the sacredness of the moment. You know, Donette read from the information that was given to the slaves at the time, and they even spoke of idleness. There
Yes.
was no slave that was ever idle. So, you know, people work from sun up to sundown. If you hear any of the slave narratives, exhaustion was what was the daily ritual. So sacred memory. We have to remember what the legacy was at the time, so we don't repeat those behaviors. And so people continue to speak up about injustices that they see. So I'm sorry, Ronald. I took 2 words, but I thought it was
Absolutely appropriate, Dr. Nelson.
Mhm.
Sean?
Yeah, I was gonna go with remembrance too, and some sort of that same lane. So I'm gonna go with fortitude. Just thinking about, I can't even imagine it, but the mentality, of that time, and still having, you know, just that will to continue to push on, even though you knew that there was so many constraints in front of you that would not let you really achieve freedom. And I think that's important now because I have friends who complain about some of the smallest things. And I'd like to bring them back down to the fact that what is the real problem here? Like even with my son, we have, is it a big problem or a little problem? And even at his 8-year-old age, he can understand how to tell the difference between what's something that's really hard for him and what's something that he's just has an idea that it's hard, but he can work through it. And then seeing him work through it, he's ecstatic. At an older age, we should feel that type of fortitude, just like kids when they can succeed at something that they were working hard at. And we can take that memory and push it forward or pay it forward now, because that's what laid the groundwork for us to be here, even though there's so much work to do. And we know it's an exhausting road, but you have to have that fortitude in order to break through, because let's be real, they're counting on you to stop and give up. They're counting on the good voices, the people who are really involved, to say, this is enough. I can't do it anymore because I'm not getting through. If we don't, I think we will see some things change. So fortitude for me.
Okay. And that?
I'm back to remember and recommit. Those are my 2 words. That's it.
Okay. Well, I think the day means several things to all of us. We may all have that word that stands out. For me, I'll echo what you guys say. It's along the lines of always being able to remember who you are and where you come from, and the resilience that it instilled in us. And that we're able to have these forums today means that it's being manifested, that we're taking steps forward, and we just can't be deterred. But back to even when Jeanette, and I don't want to take up too much time because we only have a few more minutes left, when you talked about the declaration of General Granger, and he talked about the 2 things that we couldn't do was to congregate near the military post. So in other words, we couldn't teach ourselves to fight back, and we couldn't stay idle, right? Which means we have to keep working. And that was the foundation for the vagrancy laws, which led to Jim Crow, which led to a whole other thing, because their vision of us is just labor. If the mule isn't towing something, then he's not doing anything. He's not of any use if he's not working, and we're so much more than that. And I think that's what these forums allow us to know and understand. And it comes from those humble roots. It comes from those disastrous stories that we hear about the slaves and the plantations, that we have this strength, that we have this resilience. So I'm just proud to be a part of all this. I'm proud of all you for participating. And I'm just going to move on with the program. I just couldn't hold that in, guys. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Ron, for that. I definitely was going to use the word resilience as well. To be resilient during that time, I think was, I would say, the only option. Folks, self-actualization wasn't around for, enslaved African Americans. Like, to say that, yeah, you're free, but you can't be idle. Like, all I did was work. What are you talking about? Like, give me a break. And just to see how our ancestors had to be resilient during that time, it speaks profound volumes. And I'm so blessed to be in a space where I can be a part of a team that would gather folks together so that we can educate ourselves and learn more about Juneteenth and the many ways that we can celebrate it, and especially educate the youth. Man, they are the future leaders. And it, like to Sean's point, we have to educate our children and our children's children about Juneteenth and the historical advancements and roadblocks that our ancestors, you know, encountered, especially when Dr. Jermaine says, when you enter in that meeting and there's no one else that looks like you have to ask why. That spoke to my heart because I can't tell you how many times I've entered meetings where there was no one who looked like me, and I didn't dare to ask why, because I just kept myself, you know, petite and small and just stayed in my place. But learning more about Juneteenth and the resilience of our people just allows me to see, like, yes, I do deserve a seat at the table as well. So thank you for your insights and your comments for that. So I'll wrap it up with this one last question. All right, just on a fun note. So you're at the Juneteenth celebration, you know, and your song comes on, and your song really truly embodies the day, the atmosphere, everything Juneteenth means to you. What is your song and why? We'll open up this question to the chat as well once our panelists answer.
Okay, I'll go. So I came across this song, by Nina Simone. It's called "If I Wish I Knew How It Feels to Be Free." It was written by Billy Taylor, but and it was back in the 1950s. But once Nina Simone put her stamp on it, it took off. Everybody loved it. I think it really conveys in the simplest terms, how many of us feel, especially when we are in certain spaces and we can't be our authentic selves. So if you would indulge me, I'll just read a couple of verses from that song. It says, "I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say them loud, say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart, remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know how it means to be me, then you will see and agree that every man should be free." So when you get a chance, listen to it on YouTube. It's Nina Simone.
Excellent.
Dr. Jermaine or Sean, if your song comes on at the Juneteenth celebration, what song are we choosing and why?
I'll chime in. Since I said Sacred Memory, I have two songs. One, if it were popular, it would be Glory, John Legend singing. And the other one would be Lift Every Voice and Sing. And I think, anyone who's not familiar with it should put it in the chat. We can put it in chat, or you should Google it for so many reasons. But I have it sitting here to the right of me. And the first two lines is ring with the harmony of liberty. And if we think about, people always talk about the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all. When we move to a dynamic where it is for all, we're in a great space. So that's my thought.
So of course for me, since I went with Fortitude and Remembrance, I'm gonna pick two songs too. So for the Fortitude side, I'm gonna say "Ain't No Stopping Us Now," because that's just one of those songs that make you feel like you can go do anything. But for the remembrance side, I actually heard this song earlier this year. It's by a African American country artist named Willie Jones, and the name of the song is American Dream. So the first couple of lyrics go, young man, got the heart of a lion and the drive of a wild horse. Young man, better watch how you step when you step off the front porch. Your granddad done went through hell. Don't take for granted what he built. Young man, if you don't know your roots, then you don't know what you stand for. Proud to be a black man living in the land of the brave and the free. Yeah, I'm all American, and that American dream ain't cheap. We've come a long way, still got a long way to go. When you're living as a black man, it's a different kind of American dream. It's a different kind of American dream. When I heard those lyrics, and I stumbled on this song. Sometimes I just go through Apple's, new playlist, and just being able to really listen to this gentleman and what he was saying. I mean, it resonated with everything that was going on, earlier this year and even from last year. So if you get a chance, listen to that song, and that would be my choices.
Amazing choices. I think it's really eye-opening to hear the lyrics of the music and to be reminded of the dreadful news that we receive, how, our Black men are being attacked in the streets and how our women are not being protected as well. Like, those songs were made so long ago, but you would think that they're talking about today. It's so surreal.
Can we make a playlist?
Yeah, we should definitely make a playlist after today. Absolutely. There's a lot of songs in the chat. Someone put So Many Pieces, which captures our stories by Nina Simone. I Shall Be Released. Beyonce Freedom. Bob Marley Redemption Song. That's a big one. Yeah, so we definitely have some nice songs, as well as Fight the Power by Public Enemy. Florence suggested that song as well. So definitely, if we can come up with a playlist to, continue to celebrate and capture the moment, that'll be great. I think that's a little project for us to work on.
Yeah, excellent.
I would just like to follow up with what Dr. Jermaine stated about, if no one's diverse in the room, we should ask why. There was an interview with Toni Morrison, who's a Black author. She has a number of books with Black characters, and the interviewer asked her, when will she make books about white characters? And you can YouTube this, but her answer was so articulate, and it was so wonderfully, her response was wonderful. And she just told the interviewer that it was very inappropriate for her to ask that. And I think for anyone that would like to ask that question in the future, that is a perfect video to watch, where you can be confident and build yourself up to ask that question, because that's not easy to ask, especially if you've never done it and you are in a room where you're the only Black person. But that is something you should definitely super Google, because it's very well articulated.
Can you share the author's name again? I'm interested.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that was really powerful. Her response to the author. It was, I saw that, so I echo what you're saying.
Absolutely. So we have about 7 minutes left. Did anyone have any comments regarding, this conversation? Thank you guys so much for coming in, Dr. Jermaine, Sean Lee, Danette. It's been amazing to learn with you guys about Juneteenth and to see how we can really incorporate Juneteenth into our spaces. And definitely what's sticking with me, Dr. Jermaine, is asking why folks like me aren't in the room. It's about time.
Yeah. Well, the great Shirley Chisholm once said, if they don't offer you a seat at the table, you bring your own chair.
I also want to thank all the panelists for all the research that you've done and all the insightful opinions you had that created a learning space for all of us here. So thank you very much for that.
I agree 100%. I echo what Shamira said. Everyone did an excellent job. All the comments were thoughtful and well articulated, and I think a lot of information was shared today that's going to help us all.
And I want to thank you guys for making me do this. I am so much richer for it, and I'm interrogating a lot of other stuff. So really, thank you.
I'd like to thank all the participants for sharing, engaging, learning, very meaningful dialogue, and I hope to meet all of you guys soon.
Yeah.
All of you, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And the last thing I'll add is just stay engaged, stay talking to your leaders, like Jermaine said. We're not going to stop. So as long as you guys keep asking and keep making sure that these type of discussions and this kind of content is out there, it'll be there and it'll be very helpful towards the future.
Yeah, and shout out to the BLACC ERG, as well as Monica Keith, who wasn't able to introduce herself earlier. Thank you so much, and thank you for the Diversity Council for allowing this to happen. And just thank you for all the attendees, for, wanting to engage and learn more. We appreciate it so much.
Yes. Beautiful.
Thank you. This is our first Juneteenth history panel. We hope to make this a yearly event or even more common. This is the first of many in this series of uncomfortable conversations that are very much needed. So thank you for the attendees for tuning in and learning with us. And again, to our awesome panelists for educating us today. Thank you.
And the rest of the events this week. Can't get the plug.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
And there's more.
Yes, I hope you guys will tune in tomorrow for Jeopardy. From 12:30 to 1:30. We're going to be competing against Mount Sinai West, Mount Sinai Morningside, and Mount Sinai Queens. So this was a great precursor to tomorrow's Jeopardy match. And Thursday, we have a very exciting conversation with our leaders. The leaders of Mount Sinai West, which is Dr. Flato, Art Gianelli from Mount Sinai Morningside, and Dr. Cameron Hernandez from Mount Sinai Queens. Again, we told you that we are continuing this series of uncomfortable conversations. So we are excited to speak with our leaders in regards to Juneteenth and healthcare. And we are going to wrap up our series of events on Friday with a dance performance by Isota from 1 to 2 p.m. So thank you guys. I hope you guys will tune in.